So recently, what I've been looking at is security vulnerabilities. So what I wanted to do was share with you how to, first of all, tackle it, solve it, and then prevent it from happening again. So I've got this email recently, which is a GitHub email. It basically sends all of the vulnerable packages in your repositories or whatever repos you have. So what happens generally is we have packages that we add into our package.json file, and them packages, they get patch updates or major minor updates. So in this example here of this email, if you look at the Costa Coffee video that I did as my very first video, that was a while back. So some packages out of that become out of date and therefore vulnerable to hackers. And again, you can see here that we have moderate severity and critical severity. We also have high, low, and moderate as well. So if you work in the finance industry, for example, you will have to maintain these packages that we have installed in your package JSON. So this is where we would need to update or find alternative packages using npm itself, and then therefore making a decision whether we can A, upgrade our packages, or B, look for an alternative, or C, if we can do our own solution in-house and then therefore use that instead. So what we're going to look at in this video is everything to do with security vulnerabilities, how you can find them, how you can fix them, and how you can kind of future plan ahead so that you get dependable alerts just like this one over here in your inbox. Therefore, you're up to date and you won't get these vulnerabilities in your code base. Right, so the first thing I want to do is I need to download this Costa Coffee website. So let me just copy the link, and then in my main browser, I'm just going to look for that so I can paste it in here like so. And then also, before we even get started, there's a blog that GitHub have done as well. So GitHub have Dependabot Alerts, but there are other you can use such as Nexus security vulnerabilities. So bear in mind that you can use either or, but some companies use Nexus. And if you're just coding a small project like this one, then it's good to have GitHub Dependabot Alerts set up. So everything you need to know about security vulnerabilities is in here. But what we want to do is we want to get started. So this is the code base here, and you can see I've not touched this for 3 years. So therefore, there will be a lot of outdated packages in the package JSON, which is why we have vulnerable versions. You can see here we're using React 17. We're on React 18 going on to 19 now, and I believe 19 is stable. But again, all of this needs to be updated. And I'm guessing when I use this as well, the node version was quite low. So again, we can use the right node version as well. So at the moment we're on node 22. So let's try and add that into our code base as well. So let me just click back onto code here, and we want to clone this. So let me just copy this. So what I want to do now is get my terminal up. So I've got it up here. Let me just zoom in a bit. And before I do anything, I want to use NVM to change the node version. So I want to use node 22. So now we are using node 22 here. And then all I want to do is git clone and paste in the repository that I've got in here, Costa Coffee-YT. So now I've got that. All I want to do now is cd into that. So cd Costa Coffee-YT, and then code space dot in here. So this will open up our code base. And then now what I can do is make changes to the vulnerable versions. So now if I open my terminal, and in here I want to make sure again that I'm using the right node version. So nvm use 22. Let's use that one. So now what I want to do is check the versions of the outdated packages. So let me go in package.json, and in here we will see all of our packages as the dependencies. I can go back into my email. So let's just do that actually. So let me just go back into my email, and here you can see the vulnerable packages. Now in here you can see CSS and Babel Traverse, but what will happen is, and also Nano ID. So let's just check them in our code base. And if you look in the dependencies here, we don't actually have post CSS or Nano ID or anything like that installed in our project. So what will generally happen is these packages over here, so your React, your style components, and so on, they will also have packages, and they will also be in the package lock. So you can first of all search in here for Nano ID. So let's just go in package lock and then do Command F Nano ID, and you can see it in here. So in our node modules, we have Nano ID installed. We essentially need to upgrade that. So that's the first one, and we can search for that one as well. So post CSS, and you can see there's 17 instances of it being used, and one of them will be in there. So let's see, here we have post CSS. So these packages are sub packages of whatever the dependencies we are using in the package JSON. Now, to find out what package is being used in here, what we can do is a simple command. So that is npm space ls and then the package name. So in our case now, it's post CSS. Press enter, and then this will basically list down all of the places where post CSS is. At the minute, it's not showing because we don't have any node modules. So let's first of all install that. So npmi, let's install everything first of all, and then we will run that command again. And now that we've installed it here, you can see when we install something, you'll see this bit over here, which is a little section where it says added 138 packages and audited 139 in 8 seconds. What we can do here now, it says we got 4 vulnerabilities, 3 moderate and 1 high, and you can basically address them. So you can do npm audit fix and npm audit fix force. Now that can potentially solve the problem, but what will happen is if you got a very old code base with many different dependencies on there, the high likelihood is that something will break, because if we update major versions, then something's going to break. So what we want to do is avoid this, and we want to manually update each package individually. So we have the 4 vulnerabilities, that's fine. What we can do now is let's do npm ls post css like I was mentioning before. Now you can see here that post css is a subpackage of next of 12. So again, I believe this is next.js 12 that we used. So now what we can do is we can either upgrade next.js 12 to whatever the latest version is, but again, we have many changes in that. So we have the app router and all of that. So we don't want to do that. But what we can do is just upgrade post CSS itself. So what we can do is simply search for post CSS in npm. So let's go ahead in our browser. At the top over here, we can do npm post CSS and press enter. And then you can see the package here. So that's fine. And now what we want to look at in particular is the version here. So we have 8.5.3, and that was last published a month ago. So that's good. What we want to do is go into the versions over here. We have 267. So if we go in our code base once again, and you can see 8.4.5. So now we have an updated version. And in GitHub, this email over here, it gives you the non-vulnerable version. So in our case, we have it says here 8.4.31 upgrade to something greater. So what we can do, because it's a minor update that we have on the latest version, is we can just upgrade to 8.5.3. So that's the quick fix for that. But just to also verify it even further, we can go on a website called Snyk or Snyk, whatever you call it. And in here, we have developer security. So in here is basically where we can find out vulnerable versions. So you can look through this in your own time. You can accept, obviously, the cookies and so on. But if we type in at the top over here, Snyk, and then the package name, so post CSS, press enter. Now you'll basically get the open source security over here. So let's click that. You can click through to here, but there's a link at the bottom underneath as well, actually, which goes direct to the source. So now you can see here we have post CSS vulnerabilities. Now, if you want to see the vulnerabilities here, you can see improper input validation. That's a medium. We have regex denial of service as well. And then these are the vulnerable versions. So if you scroll down, you can see these M's are highlighted over here. So basically what that means is these have the medium severity over here. And as you get older, you can see 3 and so on. Now, essentially, if you go from 8.4.31 and further up, you don't have any vulnerable versions. So what we want to do is we've kind of seen that, first of all, we've seen the version is 8.5.3, that's fine. And we've also verified in Snyk over here that there's no direct vulnerability. So that's the one we want to upgrade. So what we can do now is go in our code. And essentially what we can do is in our package JSON, we want to scroll this. If we just bring this down. Now, because we don't want to upgrade Next itself, at the minute we're on 12, but again, that needs upgrading. What we can do is in here, we can add another object, and this object is called overrides. So let's just do that now. So So speech marks over here, and then if you can see, basically there's loads of options over here that we have, but the one we want is this one, which is overrides. And in here now we can add in our override. So in our case, we want post CSS, so post CSS like so, and we don't want none of this stuff that's happened by Copilot. We want to just add the version that we want. So in our case, it's going to be 8.5.3 like that. So now that's the first one out of the way. So let me just save that first of all, and then what we can do is do npm I to install everything. So when we do npm ls and then post CSS again, instead of seeing post CSS 8.4.5, we should see the latest one, which is 8.5.3. And if we scroll down a bit more, now what happened is we have 2 vulnerabilities instead of 4. So again, that has solved that issue there. So now what I want to do is quickly just do npm ls. So let me just clear everything out. npm ls post CSS. And now you can see it's been overridden, and this is the one we want. So the override section is the one where we can override our sub packages in our dependencies over here. So that's a handy tool to have. So in our case now, we've reduced the vulnerabilities. So if you scroll up, we have from 4 to 2. So that's good. And then next thing is if we clear again, we want to do the same thing again for another package. So in our case now, we have Babel Traverse. So let me just copy that. And then same process applies. We basically go into Babel Traverse. It says here upgrade to 7.23.2. So let's do that. So in our Snyk, we can search for Babel Traverse, press enter. And now you can see here, we've got a vulnerability that was published. And this one's a critical. So this is very important to fix. So let me just go into the email once again. So it says 7.23.2, and this says critical severity over here. And then obviously you can search for this CVE number over here, and then you can go into it further. But what we want to do is go back into Snyk itself. So in here now, you can see we're on 8 over here as the alpha versions. So what we essentially want to do is we want to do something from 7.23 onwards. So let's find a stable version, which is going to be 7.26.10. So let's find that in. So let's go into npm now. So you can see we want 7.26.10. Let's go in here, and you can see the latest stable version is 7.26.10. So all we need to do is just to verify that, actually, let's go into here, and this is the latest version. So that's what we want. So in our code, let's go into here, and then all I want to do is npm ls babel traverse. So let's search for that. You can see here now it says we've got Babel Traverse as the latest one over here. So I suppose this is fine, but there might be somewhere where we don't have this version over here. So let's just actually go in our package block and search for that. So let me paste in Babel Traverse. We have 7.26.10. That's fine. This one is, and this is 2.5.9. And again, you can see all of the versions that we're using. 7.4.5, so that's fine. And 259. So yeah, it looks like everything's fine for this one. So we can skip this one. And then in our emails, essentially we can go through all of these and fix them all and so on. And again, let's just check Nano ID as the last one, just so you get a rough idea of what's going on. So we can do npm ls nano ID, enter. And you can see here now, because nano ID is used from post CSS, we might have actually fixed the nano ID as well, because post CSS uses nano ID. So because we upgraded post CSS, therefore nano ID might have upgraded as well. So we've got 3.3.11. So let's go back in our email, and we want to basically upgrade further than that. So 3.3.8, we have the 11 version. So let's just verify that in Snyk as well. So we can paste in nano ID and press enter. And you can see here the vulnerable versions in nano ID. And what do we have is the 3.3.11. So let's just find that one. And you can see here that this has no vulnerabilities in here. So that was last updated 18th of March, which was a few days ago. So again, this should be fine as well. So now what I want to do is, we've done all of that. We've upgraded a couple of packages. what you should do now in this scenario is test everything, make sure it works, run your package or whatever your project is. So you can do npm start, npm run dev, npm build, and npm test to test all your unit test work. Run your pipelines if you have any pipelines that you're working with, and then that way you can verify that everything is still working from upgrading our packages. The last thing what we want to do is we want to now that we've done everything in here, let's just clear it all out. So I've shown you how to, first of all, find obviously what packages are being used. So in our case where nano ID was a vulnerable version, then what we can do is basically npm ls, put the package name in, and then we can work up the tree to see what is actually the main package that we've used and what can we do about it. So now what we want to do is run npm audit. So when we install something, it kind of comes up, and I mentioned this previously in the video, but we want to audit our packages. Now, if we scroll up just after, this generates a report. Now, this report gives us the vulnerable versions of a certain package and so on. And you can see here, we can basically do npm audit fix to fix the two vulnerabilities. Now, you can see if we scroll up, we have Babel runtime and next. So in our email that I got, so let's check that first of all. We do have Babel runtime as a vulnerable package over here, and we also have next as a vulnerable package. So all of the other packages that we upgraded, something might be a sub package of something else, such as braces and especially nano ID. So because we may have done the overrides for that, then that might have fixed the other packages as well. So now it just leaves us with two. So in this scenario, what you can do is, this is another way that I'm going to show you, but I highly recommend doing the first method where you kind of verify everything works and so on. So what you can do here now is we can also do npm audit fix force. And if you're lucky, your app might still work, but if you're not, then you basically need to do the manual steps. And you can see here now, it says there's an error in here. So all of the, basically what happens is we are upgrading Next.js to 15, but again, we're on React 17. So I think the peer dependencies will be a conflict. So we might need to also upgrade React 17 and then also upgrade Next.js. So you can see here now, we want 18.20 on React. So actually, what we can do is do that. So let's manually do this. So in here, we have React as 17. So what we also need to do is do the same for React DOM. So these are major upgrades that we need. So in turn, what will happen is that they basically need to match, and we also need to verify that the app works and so on. So let me just save this. Now, if I do the npm audit, so npm audit fix, now we have the peer dependency working. It might actually fix everything. So it says overriding peer dependency and so on. And now you can see that we only have one high severity vulnerability. And what is that one? So it still is next. You can see we essentially need to upgrade the version. So let's just do npm ls, and we want to find the package of next. So what version are we using? We're still using 12. So what we can do here now is we can use the 15 version. So if you scroll up after all these warnings, again, you should fix the warnings as well. But in our case now, there is next 15.3, which is the latest one. So what we can do here instead of latest is paste this in, and we want to basically add anything greater than. So let me save this. And now if we do npm install and press enter, so this will install all of the latest packages that we have. And if you want to kind of do a clean install, then what you can do also is you can delete your node modules and then also your package lock, and then just do npm I as well that way. And then that'll basically give you peace of mind that everything is up to date and we've got the right versions. So now essentially that is installing. So now you can see we've got a few errors still. And again, this is probably because of this React IS. So let's just update that one as well. 18.2.0. And I might be doing it like this, but this is a sped up version of what I would do. What I would normally do is upgrade all of the React packages and then test everything works and then make sure that nothing breaks in our code base or nothing breaks in our build. then we would upgrade. But in this scenario here, what I've done is just upgraded without testing it or running any unit tests and so on. But this code base doesn't have any unit tests, so I'm just showing you how it would be done in an environment. So I'm running npmi now, so this should fix all of the legacy peer dependencies, because now we're on 18 React and Next.js 15. Now it's saying here there's still more, basically more conflicts. So this is where we can either do npm I legacy peer depths instead of force. So let's just go ahead and do that. And then what will happen is it will choose the right versions of each package that can be utilized together as peer dependencies, and that will update in your package lock file. So what I'll do is do that. So it's basically npm I legacy peer depths, and then essentially all of the sub packages should match and everything should be fine. There shouldn't be any errors then. And then what we can do is we can do npm audit again. So now you can see here we don't even need to do npm audit fix, but essentially we've found 0 vulnerabilities in here. So essentially what's happened is we've upgraded all of the packages that were vulnerable, we fixed them, and again, what I would recommend is to test everything works for correctly, run your build, run your pipeline, and so on. And then if everything's fine, then you've essentially fixed all of your security vulnerabilities. So now what I'm going to show you next is how to get alerts with GitHub, and I will show you how to do that next. Right, so now that we've fixed all of the vulnerable versions with the npm audit, if there was anything left behind, so anything that needed a manual review and to update, what we can also do is paste in this command here, which is npm audit dash dash json, and then audit report.json. So if you press enter on this one, what this generally does is it creates an audit report file here for you that you can kind of manually inspect. So if we scroll down, you can see in here that essentially we don't have any vulnerabilities. So in this object, we'll list all of the vulnerabilities that we've had. This checks our package log file. Anything that is vulnerable, it will highlight it in here. At the minute, we've got 0 in everything. So in our metadata, you can see here the total is 0. And then again, in here, we've got some more information about how many dependencies we use. So any prod dependencies in here, and then any optional ones we have, and the total in here as well. So that is just an extra thing that I wanted to show you. But essentially, if there was anything in here, you would basically install the updated version of the package, which I've shown you in the previous video, and then that way you can kind of monitor using npm ls and choose the relevant package and so on. There's one final thing also that I want to show you, which is essentially to prevent future vulnerabilities. So you can run this command, which is npm outdated, and if you press enter in here, what this will do is it kind of shows you all of the packages that we're using. We are on the current versions in here. We have the wanted versions and also the latest in here. So you can kind of compare what you want to do and where we can kind of improve our vulnerabilities in here. So that is a handy command to have. And then again, we have the npm audit fix as well that we can use. So these are all of the methods that you can do to fix your security vulnerability, and I've shown you that in this video. But what I want to do now is I want to commit everything to GitHub, because in our Dependabot alerts in here, I got this email, and we essentially want to get these emails continuously. So what we can do is enable them. So let me first of all commit our changes. So in here, I'm just going to put fixed security vulnerabilities and upgraded packages, something like that. And now what we can do essentially is just commit and push this. Again, only commit and push this if you've tested everything locally, everything runs correctly, your pipelines are running, all of your checks essentially. So now I've done that, we can go into the GitHub, and this was from 3 years ago. So if I refresh, it should be from now. And now you can see everything is from now, so everything's fine. But what I want to do is I want to find my security vulnerabilities. So what we can do now is we can use GitHub security alerts. So essentially we want to open Dependabot alerts. So if I go into here in the settings, and in settings we can basically go on to security, so code security over here, and then we have Dependabot Alerts over here. It says here, keep your dependencies secure and up to date. You can learn more about Dependabot over here, but essentially, we can receive alerts for vulnerabilities that affect your dependencies and manually generate Dependabot pull requests to resolve these. So we can configure the alert notifications, which if I open this in a new tab, this basically does the settings. So we can do this. So let's actually do this. I've got my email here. You can change that to whatever you need to. Then you can kind of automatically watch repositories. When you're given push access, you can automatically receive notifications for this. And then you can enable teams as well. So basically, going through each section in here, you can subscribe to obviously more than one thing in here. So you got basically notify me on GitHub and email. So the way you notify on GitHub is if I go into my notifications in here, you can see a security vulnerability in the next affects at least one of your repositories. So again, this is scanning all my repos and saying that actually this next version is out of date and so on. I can click into this and you can see here now it gives you more information. So it says high severity, published on December the 17th 24, updated on December 19th 24. So now this one we've kind of fixed on the Costa Coffee website, but we also need to do it in the API. So I'm just going to leave that for now. But if we go back into notifications in this section over here, you can see these ones over here notify me on GitHub and email, so you can add that in as well. And then you can also add ignored repositories in as well, just so you, if you didn't want to receive any notifications for a certain repository that you're kind of working on and so on. Then here we got stuff to do with GitHub Actions on workflow run. So this is where we need to make sure that the pipeline runs correctly, everything's working correctly, nothing breaks when we upgrade our vulnerabilities, especially on major versions. So that's another check you could add in here. And again, new vulnerabilities we can update in here. So you can click through here. It's just a drop down. You can select which ones you want and save. So again, we got weekly, daily, and don't send. So these are the ones that you can update, which is in the notifications, and again in security as well. You can update in code security what we have. So I'll let you look into this further, but what essentially is this code security tab. Security and analysis features help you keep your repository secure and up to date, because we don't want anything, if you're, for example, if you're developing like a SaaS product or something that is going out to the public, then we want to make sure that is secure. So all of these options in here, you can enable all and disable all as you wish. So some of them are here: private vulnerability reporting. You can just give all of this a read, but essentially, if you want to future proof your code, make sure it's up to date, then I would say keep on top of this, because what will happen is, like what happened in this email over here, we essentially was on Next.js version 12, which is three major versions out of sync, because we did this work 3 years ago. And I'll link the video into the description as well. But if we continue to kind of iterate and continuous development with this and make it so that every week we are doing small upgrades on, your certain packages, for example, this nano ID one over here, then what we can do is basically do smaller improvements each time, and then that way you don't have this big massive job of fixing all the vulnerabilities, because what that will do is it will bring in some more complexity into your code base, because you have to solve so many different things. If you just continued and improved it, that's the best practice in my opinion. And essentially that way you're not bumping up three major versions, because again, the Next.js version 12 was using the pages, and now from 13 onwards it was using the app router. So again, there's a lot that's changed, and there's a lot of new features that are in place on Next.js. So therefore, it's good to keep a good steady monthly flow on improving these vulnerabilities and so on. So just to finally recap everything, what I would suggest is, first of all, you got your npm ls command that can check for individual packages. You've got your npm audit fix command, which essentially fixes everything for you. You can either force it as well, you can upgrade your package JSON to your latest versions and run npm install. You can also update your dependencies manually with npm update and also yarn upgrade if you're using yarn. And then finally, you can enable the Dependabot, which kind of tells you on a weekly basis or a daily basis what's going on. There are other security tools out there such as Nexus that do this for you, but if you're working on GitHub, then this is a very handy tool. You can utilize it on all your code bases and your repos, and it will help you a lot in essentially maintaining a secure code base. Anyways, I hope you learned a lot from this video, but essentially you need to make sure that your code base is secure. So it's all good and well coding the next best thing, but we need to make sure that everything is secure, especially for yourself and your customers and also your code base. So I hope this helped. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.